When most people think about income, they think about one thing: the paycheck. How much it is, whether it's growing, whether it's enough. And that framing, income as a single category measured only by amount, obscures something structurally important. Income isn't one thing. It's a category with fundamentally different types inside it, each with a different relationship to time, effort, presence, and compounding. And the type of income being built matters more than the amount in almost every case. Think about what varies between income types. The first variable is presence. Some income requires you to be there, actively, hourly, your output directly tied to the time you put in. Other income doesn't. It produces whether you're present or not, whether you're working or not, whether you're awake or not. That distinction between presence-dependent and presence-independent income is one of the most structurally significant differences in finance, and most people have only ever built the first kind. The second variable is scalability. Some income scales with input: more hours, more income, better performance, higher rate. But the ceiling is always determined by how much input can be sustained. Other income scales with position. The asset grows, the system expands, the return increases without a proportional increase in input. One type scales linearly, the other compounds. And those are not equivalent trajectories over time. The third variable is leverage. Some income creates leverage, the ability to produce more from a position than from effort alone. A business that employs people, a portfolio that compounds, an asset that generates rent, a system that produces without your direct involvement. Each of these multiplies output beyond what one person's effort could create. Other income has no leverage. One person, one set of hours, one output, capped by the limits of that person's time. The income with leverage and the income without it are structurally different instruments. Even if the amounts look similar today, they compound toward very different positions over time. Most people never examine which type of income they're building, not because they don't care, because the system around them presented one type as the default and never made the others feel like accessible alternatives. Earned income, the paycheck, the salary, the hourly wage, is what school prepares you for, what the labor market is structured around, what culture frames as the normal way income works. The other types exist. They're visible, they're discussed, but they're framed as advanced, as requiring capital or connections or a threshold most people haven't reached yet. When, in reality, the structural differences between income types are just mechanics. And mechanics can be understood before they're accessed. Understanding them clearly is the beginning of building something different from the default. Earned income is the most familiar type. You perform work, you receive compensation. The exchange is direct and proportional. More hours, more pay. Better skills, higher rate. More value delivered, more earned. It's intuitive. It's how most people understand income to work. And for most of history, it's been the primary mechanism through which ordinary people built financial lives. But earned income has a ceiling, and that ceiling is structural, not a function of effort. The ceiling exists because of one fixed constraint: time. There are a limited number of hours in a day, a week, a year, and earned income, in its purest form, is a direct exchange of those hours for compensation. Which means the ceiling on earned income is determined by two things: how many hours can be sold, and the rate per hour. You can increase the rate, skill development, specialization, promotion, career progression. You can increase the hours, to a point. But hours have a physical limit, and beyond a certain threshold, more hours produce diminishing returns on everything outside the income. So the ceiling exists, and it's not breakable through effort alone, because effort is constrained by time, and time is finite. There's a second structural property of earned income that's less discussed. It's fully presence-dependent. The income arrives because you showed up, because you performed, because the hours were exchanged. The moment the exchange stops, the income stops. There is no residual, no compounding, no position that continues to produce after the effort ends. The relationship between input and output resets to zero every time the work stops. This means earned income produces no accumulation in itself. What accumulates is what's left over after the income has been spent, the surplus deployed elsewhere. But the income itself doesn't compound, doesn't grow while you sleep, doesn't build a position independent of the next day's effort. None of this makes earned income worthless. It's the foundation most people start from, the mechanism that generates the surplus that can eventually be deployed elsewhere. The problem isn't earned income itself. It's treating earned income as both the foundation and the destination, using it as the only structure, building an entire financial life on top of it without ever developing anything that produces differently. Because an entire financial life built on presence-dependent, time-capped income is an entire financial life that stops producing the moment the presence stops. The ceiling on earned income isn't a personal limitation. It's a structural property of the income type. And understanding that distinction matters, because most people who feel stuck at a financial ceiling respond by trying to push through it with more effort, more hours, better performance, higher productivity, all of which are reasonable within the structure of earned income, all of which will produce incremental gains within that structure, but none of which will break through the ceiling, because the ceiling isn't made of effort, it's made of time. And effort can't manufacture more time. It can only use the existing time more efficiently, until the efficiency runs out. Pause for a second. If you're still listening, it's probably because this didn't feel exaggerated. That's intentional. If this way of thinking matters to you, like the video, subscribe. We'll keep going deeper. Beyond earned income, there are income types that share one structural property earned income never has. They produce without your direct presence. Not because you're not involved, not because no work went into building them, but because once the position exists, once the asset is deployed, the system is built, the structure is in place, it continues to produce independent of your hourly input. Passive income is the most commonly discussed. Rental income, royalties, licensing fees, revenue from content or systems built once and accessed repeatedly. The defining characteristic isn't that it requires no work. Building the position requires significant work. The defining characteristic is that the ongoing production is decoupled from ongoing hourly input. The property generates rent whether you're working that day or not. The royalty arrives whether you're thinking about it or not. The system produces without requiring the same effort each time it delivers output. That decoupling between production and presence is what makes it structurally different. Portfolio income operates similarly. Dividends, interest, capital gains from positions held. The income arrives from the position, not from the effort. You don't clock in to receive a dividend. You hold the position. The position produces. The production compounds back into the position. The position grows. The production grows. That's the compounding property that earned income doesn't have. Earned income adds. Portfolio income multiplies. And over a long enough time horizon, the difference between adding and multiplying produces outcomes that feel completely disproportionate to the original inputs. Business income, at its most structural, operates on leverage. A business that employs people produces output beyond what any single person's effort could create. The owner's income isn't capped by the owner's hours. It's connected to the output of a system that can grow, that can employ more people, that can serve more customers, that can generate more revenue without a proportional increase in the owner's direct input. That's leverage in its most direct form. Not borrowed money, not risk for its own sake. The structural ability of a position to produce beyond what individual effort allows. What all of these share, passive, portfolio, business income, is a separation between the time spent building the position and the ongoing production that position generates. You build once, the position produces repeatedly. With earned income, you produce once per hour exchanged. The production stops when the hours stop. With presence-independent income, the production continues after the building phase is complete. It compounds, it accumulates, it builds a position that gets stronger over time rather than resetting to zero each time the work stops. That's the structural difference that matters most, not the specific form it takes, not the specific asset class or vehicle. Whether the income continues when you're not there. And for most people, all of their income stops the moment they do. There's a comparison most people make when thinking about income. They compare amounts. A salary of this much versus that much. A side income of this size versus that size. Total income this year versus last year. And amount matters. It's not irrelevant. But there's a more important comparison that almost never gets made. Type. Consider two positions. Person A earns a high salary, comfortable, well above average, growing steadily year over year. Person B earns significantly less from their job, but has built a small portfolio income and one small passive income stream alongside it. By income amount, Person A is ahead, clearly. By income type, the positions are not equivalent. Person A's income stops entirely if the employment ends. Every dollar is presence dependent. The ceiling is time. The trajectory is linear. Person B's income has redundancy. Part of it continues regardless of what happens to the job. Part of it compounds without additional input. The trajectory is not purely linear. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, those two structural positions produce very different outcomes. This is why type matters more than amount. A larger amount of the wrong income type doesn't change the structural position. It makes the ceiling more comfortable. It makes the dependency feel more secure. It makes the single point of failure feel less like a vulnerability. But the architecture is unchanged. One source, presence-dependent, linear ceiling, stops when the effort stops. And the comfort that comes with a higher amount is precisely what makes the architecture harder to question. Because everything feels fine. The income is solid. The lifestyle is supported. The future looks manageable. Until the source disrupts, or the ceiling appears, or the realization arrives that decades of high-earned income didn't build a position that produces independently. The shift toward income type doesn't require abandoning earned income. It requires adding alongside it, deliberately, with an understanding of what's being built and why the type matters. Even a small position in a presence-independent income type deployed consistently over time begins to change the structural picture. Not dramatically at first. The amounts are small. The compounding is invisible. But the type is different, and different types compound differently. The earned income adds. The passive position compounds. The portfolio builds on itself. And over time, the compounding position built from smaller amounts can exceed the linear position built from larger ones. Most people spend their entire financial lives optimizing one income type, getting better at earning, negotiating higher rates, climbing toward a ceiling they don't realize is structural until they're standing underneath it. The ceiling isn't personal. The ceiling isn't a reflection of their effort. It's just what earned income does. It caps. And the only way past it isn't more effort inside the same type. It's building a different type alongside it, slowly, structurally, with the understanding that the type determines the trajectory. And trajectory is what actually changes the position over time. If this shifted something for you, subscribe. Like this if it clarified something.